You kick it. Kick it!
Poof! What's up, everybody? How are we? Hope your day's going good. Hope everything happening in your life as well, and you're staying safe out there. Welcome to another wonderful episode of the Nerd Jocks podcast. I am Chris Marone, one half of the...
I'm Jesse Grun, the other half. You know what's funny about the whole staying safe thing? Somebody listens to this during the inevitable zombie apocalypse that's going to occur from rushing vaccines through. It's a different staying safe. Like it's
true.
Staying safe is going to be totally different. It's not going to be the same staying safe.
No.
You know, it's like stay safe out there because people are trying to eat your brains.
That's a reality I think a lot of people are excited about, and ones that are more logical thinkers are like, please God, I hope this never actually happens.
Where would be the first place you'd go if there was a zombie apocalypse? What's the first place you would go?
Somewhere cold.
Cold.
Yeah.
Cold.
Being here in California, we can go up into the mountains into where it's cold and hopefully find a cabin with a guy named Bill, and hopefully he can look out for us and not potentially try to stab us in the back. What about you? I'd
invade the police impound lot first, and I'd steal weapons, vehicles, and lots of cocaine because most likely I'm going to need to stay awake at night. So I think that's probably best,
especially if it's medical grade. If they've got some of that medical grade, you're going to be staying awake for a long time.
She'd be like, "What? Zombies? Where are they?"
I'm ready.
Speaking of zombies, this is a professional segue because this is a professional show.
Right.
There have been a lot of remakes of zombie movies and even zombie games.
Yeah.
And today's show, we are going to talk about remakes, remasters, and specifically in the video game industry. We know that's done in the film industry. It's been done in the film industry for years. I think there's a new Exorcist coming out. Do we need that? I'm not sure. Okay. But specifically in the video game industry, the surge of remakes and remasters, and it was just announced recently that we're going to have both a Mass Effect remake or remaster for the next gen consoles, and also they're going to do RE4 the way they did RE3 and RE2. Which I think that's more of a remake than a remaster, and we'll kind of talk about the differences between the two.
Yeah.
So, Chris, are you a fan of the recycling that we're seeing in the video game industry?
I think the choice to do it, like you were saying, as we see in film and television, is it's just parallel to that decision making of. It's a good business move because we know if it was a popular game in the past, it's most likely will receive some sort of popularity in the future. So in terms of the business decision, it makes sense. I get it. As the consumer and artist, I only am fine with it when it actually goes to like a new level and it mirrors like, what if that game was developed in today with everything that we have and the type of thinking that we have with video game design. Then I'm cool with it if games come out and they have that, oh wow, this does feel like it's old, but it is absolutely new.
Right. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I think, and when we discuss the difference between remakes and remasters, I am a fan of some of the things they're doing with remakes.
Yeah.
We'll reference the Final Fantasy series. What they've done transitioning that. But I think that, I really dipped my toe into the whole, the remake, remaster was really what really introduced me was the whole collections idea. So when I transitioned from Xbox 360 to PS4, before Uncharted 4 came out, I purchased the Drake collection because I didn't play the first 3 games, and it was great because it's a story-driven narrative, and if you hadn't played the other games, a lot of the ins and outs of the characters and some of these moments that were built up to for 3 other games wouldn't have meant as much, for me as a consumer, for me as a gamer.
Yeah.
What I think is really interesting is, now we're seeing them all the time. Assassin's Creed isn't really linear storytelling, right?
No.
I mean, let's put that in perspective. I mean, they tried to do it, and it was really didn't go very well.
It's better now that they've removed those linear walls. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I mean, they have like this backdrop linear story going on with some spies and stuff that the last time I played Odyssey, I just didn't care.
No.
I was like, can I go back to being in Greece now?
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
can I go back to
I
that,
even think
please?
they know that. I even think they now know that.
Can I go back to being in Atlantis randomly? Like this is
Yeah.
great.
That's what it's going to be when
that.
Valhalla's out. Let me just go back into the Norse stuff. I thank you, people of the future. No. Take me back.
And so like there's certain games where the whole collection aspect of it makes sense when it's linear storytelling and I'm trying to catch people up, right?
Yeah.
The Halo Master Chief Collection was really just, I think, a cash grab. It was like, hey, look, we've got.
It also got to PC, and that's the thing. That was a choice to really get into the PC players out there into one, collective game.
Yeah, and that makes sense. When we're talking porting over something to another system that may have been an exclusive and now that exclusivity is gone, I get it. Mm-hmm. But when we're talking about something that, again, I'll go back to Assassin's Creed or the recent remakes of the Call of Duty series, which was just straight remakes. I mean, I played the first Modern Warfare when it was on. We had Xbox, what was it, 360 or what did we have at the time? I don't remember. 180? How many Xboxes have there been at this point?
A lot, and with their names, it's hard to tell who's who.
But, and then, the new remastered edition came out for PS4, and I played it, and I was like,
Yeah.
Like, other shooters have already done it better. Like, my nostalgia is not so tied to them making it a better game.
Yeah.
Chris, do you think, how would you define to the layman the difference between a remake and a remaster?
I think there's a good example of that is if you look at The Last of Us remaster that came out for PlayStation 4.
That's another good one.
Not a lot changed other than graphics and some sound design, but overall it's pretty much the same exact game. And that's more of like a remastering, whereas like a remake is supposed to be that they are in fact remaking the game down to like its code, but using that original code and doing something different, like with the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. That is a remake, but they used the original code in order to remake this game, and so they still honored what is the gameplay of Tony Hawk that we remember while adding all this new stuff to it, making it a new experience for the current gamer who didn't grow up on Tony Hawk, and a familiar yet new experience for the old gamer that grew up on Tony Hawk.
Yeah, I think and I think you hit the nail right on the head. And we're also seeing games that are kind of like blurring the line between remake and remaster, where they're keeping the core gameplay mechanics, they're keeping a lot of the things, but they're changing just enough that it seems more like a remake. I think RE2 was a really good example of that. RE3 was a good example of that as well.
Yeah,
where we kept a lot of the same, the same levels, the same enemies, the same expectations, but we changed a few things from either character emotion or your interaction with character to the point where it seemed like a remake.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest, I only played half of RE2 because I think one of my big complaints with the remastering and remake is keeping some of the gameplay mechanics that we had back then. Like, RE2 is, let's just call it what it is. Zombies are bullet sponges.
Yeah.
They were bullet sponges back in the day because you couldn't have as many zombies on screen at the time.
Yeah.
Right? So you couldn't just have some character mow through 3, because if he mows through 3, then it's like, oh, well, it's going to take a few load before we get another 3. Yeah, exactly. But now with the way we have gaming performing, and the way we have systems, it would make sense not to have bullet sponge zombies, where I was just like, I don't want to shoot these guys anymore. I'm just going to run around and run away.
Yep.
I think there are certain things that need to stay in the era at which they came from.
Yeah. And that's where I think even like developers are figuring that out even more. Ubisoft recently announced the Prince of Persia remake from Sands of Time, and everybody was like, "Oh, cool!" initially with this announcement, but then once you saw the trailer and they did it at their event and they showed it off, people were like, "This what? You kind of upgraded the graphics, not too much, just a little bit." And the gameplay looks the same. Maybe you have more enemies and a couple more puzzles or whatever, but it felt like that moment of, like you were identifying before, is it, is it just a cash grab? And it shouldn't be. If you're going to say, hey, we're going to go back and distribute this game again for people to play it, well, give us a new experience. Yeah, let it be familiar, but make it in fact new. Like, actually just take that leap of faith, Ubisoft, right, and get yourself to a place where you're willing to say, hey, we're doing a whole new take on what that game was while still honoring how you remembered it.
I think it's interesting to think about, and I'm 100% with you there. I think it's interesting to also think about game pricing for remasters, because for me, charging $60 for the same game on the next gen system when there was no storyboarding that went into it, the development was just basically brushing up and bringing something up graphically speaking, right?
Yeah.
Changing some character models, putting it in. It's not the same development time. I think that's a conversation that needs to happen, because we do see their prices drop faster. I will say that, like the Batman Arkham collection that came out, when it was Arkham Asylum and then Arkham City, that was the collection. I thought it was really interesting that and they left Origins out for some reason. I don't know. They just hate that game. Rocksteady's like, we didn't have anything to do with it. We're not really doing anything anyway. Leave us alone.
We're on a several year long sabbatical.
Whatever, Suicide Squad is coming in 2022, maybe, but I think that, and that price dropped pretty quickly down to $29.99, but it started out at $59.99, where it was like, do I want to pay $60 for two games that I've already beaten and played through just because the graphics are going to be probably a little bit better and the character models are going to be a little bit better? But I mean, it's not like we're remastering or remaking like Path of Neo from PS2, which, by the way, is on my list of games that we should totally remaster.
Absolutely.
But, yes, that's a throw. That's probably the best, in my opinion, movie connected game we've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's not like that. It's not like a PS2 game that, okay, none of those character models are going to port over. We got to redo all these character models. Okay, I can understand that. But, when we're going literally one gen to the next, you shouldn't charge the consumer $59.99 for that same experience.
Yeah, I agree. I think an example of what a true remake is recently, and anybody who is a fan of this series would know it, is the Final Fantasy VII remake that came out. Like, from top to bottom, that game is what Final Fantasy VII was and why so many people fell in love with that game. And it is done with a modern combat system. You can still do turn-based, but you can also do it in real time, and it slows down when you want to make your decisions. Of course, the camera angle is different. The graphic overhaul that was non-existent there is existent now. The character models, like everything, and they added all these new features and things to do in these side quests. They truly made it this like action RPG that people have grown to love with Final Fantasy as it's evolved. And 7 is truly that, like, this is breathtaking. I'm so impressed by this. It deserves to be the standard where if you're going to go, hey, we're going to remake this game, okay, y'all better be doing some Final Fantasy VII level stuff in order to justify that price tag of 60, some now going to be $70 in the next gen.
Yeah, hey, for me, I think game prices are, if you're going to get hours of playtime out of a game, I mean, for me, game prices, you could probably charge me, certain games, like if you would have charged me $100 for Destiny 2, have you 10
bought the
cents.
DLCs?
Yes, of course I have. So still $100 then. Yeah, exactly. But still, like, it's not a big deal to me. I know it's a big deal to some people. I'm not saying I'm made of money or anything. I'm just saying, like, when you price out how much enjoyment I've gotten out of it, and then in relation to how much I paid for it, I think it's a relatively decent price, right? By the way, all my football players make fun of me because my main character is a Titan. They're like, "You're such a noob." I'm like, What? I created a Titan in Destiny 1. It's the same guy.
You know, there's actually
it's
something
been
to
the
be
same
said
guy the whole time
about video game prices and a game recently that's had a big impact that could lead towards, you know, some of these remakes maybe going for this way, and some of these re-envisionings or remasters going this way, is a game called Genshin Impact, which is a free-to-play game. It made its development costs back in 2 weeks because it was just... It's literally a game you can play for free and beat for free and never spend any money into it. But people, because they have that option, they're like, yeah, I'll do that. And if you get enough people being like, I'll throw you 5, I'll throw you 10, that number grows. They themselves have made their money back in 2 weeks. So these are models where, like, kind of like the stuff you're talking about now with game prices, where they can shift how they go about distributing and requesting sales to happen for their games, and deliver an amazing experience, because the people are talking about Genshin Impact is literally a good game. Like, you play it and you're like, holy moly, this is really good. So I'd love to see games that were like, oh, we're going to recycle this game. Okay, what about for the generations that already spent money on it in the past? Why not make it free to play and just add these aspects of you know, microtransactions in order to entice people to spend in it?
Yeah, I don't mind microtransactions. I think they get a really bad rap. I mine them when the game already costs $60, $70, right?
Yeah, and I mine them for pay to win.
Right, exactly. Like, you know, like the Star Wars series.
Oh, Battlefront 2 did that horribly.
Oh yeah, and then they like flipped it around and fixed it. And that's like pretty solid.
Yeah.
I will say, like, looking at, there have been some really bad remakes and remasters.
Yeah.
I don't know. I grew up, well, obviously, because I'm old. Hashtag old guy with this is the hashtag symbol, I think. Hashtag old guy with Nintendo, and they tried to remake Spy Hunter. And I think there's something to be said that, about trying to recreate a nostalgic game that I didn't love because it was a great game. Yeah. I just loved it because in those moments I enjoyed it, right? Yeah. You know, it's the same thing with GoldenEye, right? They redid GoldenEye on Wii. And I mean, the reviews were fine on it, but it didn't make a lot of money, and not a lot of people bought it because people have done better at the shooter since. Yeah. And like, we didn't play GoldenEye because it was like the most insanely detailed, amazing game. It was just they did one thing really well, and that's be a first-person shooter. Yeah. And since then, it has grown and developed better first-person shooters from there. Yeah. So I think there's something to be said with trying to capture that feeling and bring it to the next level. And I think that developers need to kind of take a step back and maybe start talking to the consumers.
Absolutely.
What the consumers want remade.
Yeah, what do we want?
Or remastered.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're going to say, like, hey, we have these games in our past that we're thinking about bringing back out, maybe going back and you know, seeing a re-envisioning of them, what do you guys think? And give the list of the titles, because there's many of those. Like, a place like Ubisoft has many titles that they could put forward and let the community interact on them and vote and kind of see. And, you know, do maybe like a poll or a ranked choice voting selection and see who comes out to be like a really popular one, and go based on your response. We're going to go into development on this game, right? We're going to go into that and put that forward for the community because it looks like you're interested in it. Now, some people might say, oh, that's dangerous. There's like a slippery slope to that. And there's this, what is that? What door does that open for how much control the community has? We're the ones spending the money in the market. Right. If you provide us something we don't want, and we could have told you we don't want it, then there wouldn't be a waste of manufacturing time, developmental costs, all these things that we would just have been like, you guys could have just talked to the community. We would have let you know right away.
So we don't want the ET game remade or remastered?
No. No. Unless you're literally just saying, we're just going to literally do an entirely new ET game that you all deserved.
What do you... I'm sorry. Like, ultimately, you watch ET, you don't come away from that and go, man, I wish there was a video game of this movie.
Yeah,
It was like when I was.
there was a remake back in the day. Do you remember Conker's Bad Fur Day?
Yes.
The original one was great. They did a remake, and it was just like everybody who loved Conker's Bad Fur Day was like, "This isn't. What did you do?" And
It's not the same, right?
Yeah, that needs to be avoided. It should be avoided. We can avoid it. Do they want to avoid it? Sometimes I'm just kind of like, do you guys just want to take these losses for taxes or whatever? Like,
right.
It feels like
we don't want to look like we don't want to look as profitable because then if we bring our profits down, then we're in a different bracket, which is nice. No, I firmly, I'm a big believer in that. There's certain games that should not be remade.
Yeah.
And I think that there are games, like we kind of talked about that are meant for that generation. They're meant for that time. But I do think that gaming, as it's evolved, has become this incredible narrative-driven story piece.
Yeah.
That if I could see games brought to, current gen with the same narrative, maybe the same ideas, characters, world, but some changes made to it, and also to bring it up to date.
Yeah.
There are certain games that I would welcome that in.
Yeah.
There are certain transcendent stories that were just great, like individual worlds that were developed. Where basically the world was its own setting.
That we're looking forward that we want to come back out from our love back on PlayStation and PlayStation 2, Twisted Metal.
Yes, please bring it. Bring it.
Metal
You created this amazing world.
And Twisted Metal Black took it to an entirely new level.
Oh my Lord!
When you talk about any fan out of Twisted Metal, they're like, "Black? Did you play Twisted Metal Black? Of course I played."
Did you play Twisted Metal Black? Did you get your terrible ending? Did you get your terrible ending?
Yeah, and
did you Calypso was the worst wish granter ever?
Oh, 100%.
Yes.
But did you have an amazing time the whole time? And were you just like somehow encapsulated with all of these characters and their journeys and everything that they went through? Yes.
Yeah.
Bring that back.
Yes.
Make it like with all the technology that we have now, the game development power that we have now, just the capability of what we can do with game development. Remake Twisted Metal Black or legit just remake it.
Twisted Metal Warzone style, huge map, 150 players playing against each other in cars.
Dude.
Like in my mind, I'm just like
going around getting the power ups.
When would I get up? Would I be like Cartman in that episode of the South Park? Man, bathroom.
My favorite line in that episode is like, "Guys, do you want to go outside and have a good time and play, or do you want to stay inside and do something that really matters?" And it was like,
yes, no, I'm 100% there. But I think what's cool about Twisted Metal was PlayStation 1 was an incredible experience. First time you played, and Twisted Metal 2 took it to the next level.
Oh yeah,
that was
yes.
I mean, it was Twisted Metal 1 was good. Twisted Metal 2
like, oh my god, and 2 was like, oh my god, yeah.
Oh yeah, yes, and we created transcendent, iconic characters in those games. And the narrative, what it turned into, where everybody had their own backstory. They were very fleshed out. They connected with each other at times. I think that gives us an opportunity. I think that gives us an opportunity to take it to the next level and actually, build off of that. If you want to remake Twisted Metal 1, now that we know what we know about everything, I'd be okay with something like that. I think, they kind of did that. I will say this. They kind of did a good job with that, not Sony, but with the recent Modern Warfare. So not the remastering of Modern Warfare, but the newest Modern Warfare that came out, where we brought back some of the characters that were in the original Modern Warfare game. And it was a remake. It wasn't a remaster. That was a strict remake where we brought back Captain Price.
Yeah.
We followed some of the same semblance, but we brought the story to 2020. Yeah. And that's what was created, which I thought was cool.
Nintendo's been doing that with some of their games recently too, with like Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening, and even the Mario Sunshine that you can now play on the Switch. Like, people are legitimately like, oh wow, I didn't get to experience this then, and people who are like, no, I got to experience it, and you should still play it. So yeah, You're right. There have been places where, like that example with Modern Warfare, it works, but it also appears like they actually put in the time and effort to say, what are we doing different in order to engage our previous consumers and the consumers who have never touched this game in the first place.
Yeah, and I think, side note, have you ever seen like some of them? I guess there was I'm not as up to date on Nintendo as you are,
Okay.
but there was a Mario that came out where you could make your own worlds and levels. I can't remember which one it was called.
Yeah, it's Super Mario Maker, I believe is what it's called. Yeah.
Watching some of the levels that people made that were just all moving parts and fireball art, I like literally watch that and it gives me anxiety watching it.
Dude, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, why are you subjecting yourself to that?
Right.
You created it and then you experienced it. It's not like you created it and put somebody else in and you're like, I'm never going to play it, which is kind of like what you would expect. But you're like, no, you created your own torture device and tortured yourself.
Right. No, thank you. Before we get to our top three, I think we're both going to do top three games that we want to see either remade or remastered, and then games that should never see the light of day to ever be remade or remastered again. Yeah. I do want to talk about with VR, which we are going to do a whole show on VR, which I'm pretty excited about. Yeah. What was the Nintendo one called that I had a headache within 5 minutes of playing? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But we're seeing now them take the production companies taking these story-driven narrative games and then trying to bring them into VR. And I think we're seeing a hit or miss with that experience. Yeah. You know, I think Skyrim for some people has been a hit.
Oh yeah.
Doom for some people was a hit.
Yeah.
But I also think that there've been some misses as well.
For sure.
You know, they did the Batman Arkham game, which I played, which basically had, paper thin amount of content to it.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lot, and it was just kind of drawing off of it. It was really cool to throw a batarang the first 10 times you threw it. And then on the 11th, I was like, what else am I going to do here? But what do you think about the changes of changing something from either a third person or a first person experience and bringing it over into the VR world?
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge for developers. I think at least from what I'm hearing and paying attention to and we're talking about on Daily Gaming News is it seems that game development is getting easier, especially for next gen with the hardware and the capabilities that we have. So figuring out how to make something VR is, if it's already first person, it's easier to do. If it's third person, do you keep that third person omniscient kind of perspective, like an Astrobot kind of experience? Or do you just go into the first person? And there's actually, it's so funny that you bring that up, is I'm really hyped about Hitman's next game, which is its final game in the series. It's going to have virtual reality. It's going to have, you can play these missions through the perspective of Agent 47 in virtual reality. And hearing that is like, wait, hold on, what? Like, if you need to be in the kitchen and you need to be hiding like a chef, the game doesn't just do the animation for you. You got to do the chopping and the movement so that people look at you and seem like you're actually doing the work of the person being there. And that is a feature of like what it'll be like in VR that's different than the game, as they were Eidos Interactive was acknowledging the changes, where if you're taking those steps and those approaches to it, great. But if you're just, I don't know, porting it over just to try to get someone to experience a first-person game in VR, but it's really no different. It's like, to me, that just seems like a waste of time and effort.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. None of that ever, and I have a PSVR. None of that really drew me in. Like, I didn't look at like Skyrim VR, which first of all, I didn't play the first Skyrim because I knew I would lose so many hours of my life the way I play. Oh, I did. I did. So real quick to the viewers at home, I know the quality of both Skyrim and listeners. Yes. I know the value of both Skyrim and The Witcher, especially the third Witcher. I purposely did not play either of those games because I knew how much of my life I would lose by playing those and how angry my wife would be at me for playing those games.
I understand.
So for the sake of my marriage and the sake of my business, I said I'm not going to play Skyrim and The Witcher.
We like to call that self-control.
Yes.
Good job.
And just sometimes knowing, like I'm not going to go into an all you can. I'm not going to go into a restaurant that's all you can eat gelato because I know I'm going to have a problem with that, right?
That sounds like an idea that needs to exist.
Gelato isn't vegan.
I get where you're
Gelato isn't vegan.
What?
It's milk and eggs, bitch.
I get where you're coming from, man. I totally do. It's the Skyrim example is a good one because how many times has Skyrim come out now? It's kind of the same thing we're experiencing with GTA. I mean, they're about to crank out another GTA 5 for PlayStation 5. But when you got the GTA virtual reality upgrade, you're like, oh, wow, experiencing GTA. Like, it was like the first person upgrade that was there was a mind blower because we've never seen, Grand Theft Auto in first person. But now they have like that VR edition if you have a PC and you can play it. And it just, again, it takes it to the next level. It has to have that feeling. Like, it really has to legitimately justify the experience and not be this, like, half-assed type of gameplay.
Yeah. The only one that I will say I have mixed feelings about this will be the last point I make. I have mixed feelings about the remaster of Spider-Man 4 or Spider-Man going from PS4 to PS5. I'm probably going to buy that edition, the Miles Morales edition, because I enjoyed my first and only platinum playthrough of Spider-Man the first time because I literally made sure I did everything.
That's awesome.
This
is why the denial of The Witcher and Skyrim, what you just heard.
Yes. Why. Yeah, exactly. Yes. I mean, like Batman Arkham Knight, I literally found every Riddler trophy before I ever advanced like anywhere in the story. Like,
Someone somewhere is listening and is like,
yeah,
that's right.
Yep, dude, I'm that meme where it's like you do all the side quests first. I show up, I'm like a level 100, and the first boss is like a level 10. It's like,
get out of here! I smite you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you should not have these powers. But I think that I've mixed feelings about it because I just played through it. Like, am I super excited about it? I mean, no. Am I going to pay the extra $10 to have it? Probably. Yeah. Like, just because I enjoyed the first game so much.
So I'm happy with them as developers and.
I don't know about that new Peter Parker, bro. I don't know about that new Peter Parker.
That's a wonderful topic. So
that's a topic for another time.
Let's do our top threes. Top threes games that we would love to see remade. And I want to go remade, not remastered. Remaster is kind of like, I like what you talked about, which is we've got so many new abilities with game development. Let's not just remaster something from
yes.
Yes. So what would be your number one game you'd love to see remade?
Well, I'm going to go number 3 first. I don't want to say because I have a hierarchy because I have a 3, 2, 1. So 3, 2, 1. So the first one was so random. It's the one I mentioned already, The Matrix Path of Neo. So I thought that was a really enjoyable. So if you watch the Matrix series, there's so much action and there's so many opportunities to really do something with Neo, which was done on PlayStation 2. But there was sometimes so much going on screen while it was going on that it was just like the CPU of the PlayStation 2 couldn't handle it, which I thought was really interesting. Yeah. But I think if you remade that, or at least like I kind of put that with the other Matrix game that came out, if you did a Matrix game and kind of tied them together and you could play different characters and maybe have different outcomes available to you, but take some of what Path of Neo did, which was get you a chance to replay some of the scenes of the movie. Like the Smith fight was really cool.
Oh yeah.
Being able to be Neo in the Smith fight is cool. Amazing, right? It was really cool. Yeah. And then weave in some of the other story and maybe go past the end of the movies into some of the other characters after. I would love to see a franchise that's technically older. We're going to get some new ones. I have no idea how. We're going to get some new ones. I have my fan fiction, but I won't talk about that right now. So and then transition in. So that would be my third. A Matrix game, both Path of Neo and I forgot what the name of the Matrix game was, where you were Ghost and
Jada Pinkett Smith and the other guy. Oh yeah, Ghost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That was actually fun and had cool gameplay elements in it. Good
That
suggestion.
was number 3 for me. Yeah, that's number 3 for me. What's number 3 for you on your hierarchy?
You know, I don't really have a hierarchy, so to speak.
Okay.
I just kind of have games that I would love to see get brought back and made. So let's start off with a series. I'm so torn. There's like so many. I'm so torn. I would say this was one I was thinking about recently with. I'd love to see Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater
Mm,
remade
mm.
with the engine and everything they did with the last Metal Gear Solid 4, or Metal Gear Solid 5, sorry. So that's a thing that I think is a game that pushed the hardware to its limits when it first came out and was very shocking
Yeah.
how good it was. That now, if you were to take the ray tracing, the
Hmm.
the graphics that we have, everything to that extent with Snake Eater, especially its setting, and just add some new elements of gameplay in there, like we saw out of Kojima's last one. Though he wouldn't be involved, of course, it would be a new storyteller, or just keep the same story. Like don't change the story at all. Snake Eater is a
Sure.
wonderful story on its own, but there could be so much done with that I think would be such an amazing experience with today's game development technologies and graphics upgrade.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I have my number 2, which I think is going to be interesting, which you're going to be like, whoa, Army of Two.
Oh
I
yeah,
would love to see them redo Army of Two.
oh yeah,
I think we've got all this multiplayer going on, but I think co-op doesn't need to die out. I think there's co-op experiences that we should continue to have. And as the systems and the hardware start to accelerate, I think remaking, first of all, you got some really good narrative elements there in both the first and the second game that tie them both together. And I think you got this little world with the mercenaries that they made, which is really cool. But let's take the co-op experience and bring it to the next level.
I
Okay.
couldn't agree more.
I mean, a cover-based shooter that's third person with really good story elements, waves of enemies. You could do a lot from a MMORPG type setting where you actually like get to change out gun stuff and obviously your masks and armor and all of this, and you're just you play co-op, and then we add a multiplayer co-op experience to go along with it
Easy.
of 2-on-2 based. I
Yep.
think that would be really cool to bring to the next level. I thought that they actually did a pretty good job with those games. I really enjoyed them.
Same. I couldn't agree more. I think they those were games that we enjoyed playing, and I think they set up a lot with what co-op can be, how it
Hmm.
can feel, the customization aspect. The game had a lot of
Yes.
customization factors, which was really cool. It just was it was a genuine experience that I remember, and I've talked with some others recently who have mentioned that game, and they were like, what happened to that? They could have done something. They could do something better
Right.
now. I think a lot of games that we loved early on, they were just so ambitious for their time period. The hardware couldn't keep up
Yes.
with it. That the
Yeah.
hardware that we have now is like you can make any type of game you want. Like that is
Right.
we literally have a game on PlayStation called Dreams where you make games, and they are games that can draw so much attention, like Nintendo issuing cease and desists from people remaking Mario 64 in Dreams. That's where we're at in game
Wow.
design. That's where we're
Wow.
at. So we can go back to the drawing board on some of these games that were like Army of Two, and bring them right back with a design we wanted then, and just deliver it now.
Yeah. What would be your next on your list?
Next on my list would be a game. Speaking of Nintendo 64, is a game called Jet Force Gemini. This is a very OG third-person alien shooter. I thought it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it very much. I think you could do kind of like what No Man's Sky's done, but not make it like this big like open universe experience, like make it a star system or a specific galaxy or whatever, and you go to the different planets and you kind of fight these different bugs, and you go in and are collecting these these items or whatever, but kind of give it that quest based, side mission based experience. Get onto your ship, fly off, fight these different alien creatures. I think Jet Force Gemini, for me, I just remembered having so much fun with that game.
Yeah.
And there were, of course, some bugs that I do remember, funny enough, like actual game bugs, not bugs in the game that you fight. And I just think that there's a graphical upgrade and a gameplay upgrade there that was a really fun idea that a lot of other games that have done the alien shooter other planet experience are mirroring, but I would love to see that game kind of come back and do it with those game designs.
I remember that game, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I remember that game.
Jet Force Gemini.
Jet Force. A side note, not that I'm going to bring this one. I was actually going to bring this. I'll bring this one up on games that shouldn't be remastered or remade.
Okay.
We'll get to it. My number one has to be Dead Space. So we have, in my estimation, one of the best worlds that was created from a horror perspective. One of the most unlikely protagonists that was created. And that I think that just kind of lost its way by the time it got to the third game. I think the third game gets a lot of hatred that it doesn't deserve. I thought the snow was a very interesting setting, like it being such a heavy blizzard, you didn't know what was going on in the snow around you. You have an opportunity, especially with that first game, to expound upon a narrative that existed that was really, really solid. I honestly, I don't know if Electronic Arts would make the game that I want out of that. Okay, no offense to EA. I don't think that they necessarily make great narrative-driven games, but I would like to see another studio come in and make a great, just a fantastic survival horror game. Maybe add some new enemy types, which would be really cool.
Weapon types.
Expand, weapon types as well. Which, think about that. Think about like all of the bench crafting that you do in that game. There's so much weapon design and bench crafting that we've seen as games have gone on. Okay, we've seen it more since Dead Space came out, and I thought just, I love that game. I love one. I loved two.
Would be intense. Just the graphic overhaul alone.
There are certain, it's a very gory, it's very intense, psychologically, draining. I mean, you get out of some levels in that game where you're fighting with both like the monsters themselves and not having air because you're in space. I mean, there's so much that if we brought that to next generation, we could make an incredible series of games, an incredible cinematic series. Doesn't need to be open world. We don't need an open world game here. We could literally have a 4-part, if done right, of games for Dead Space. That would blow your mind as a consumer.
Yeah. I'm going to give my number one. I'm going to give my honorable mention because this was tough for me because I was struggling with the stealth game choice from Metal Gear Solid, Snake Eater, between this other game, which is my honorable mention, Splinter Cell Chaos Theory. That was the first one that did the PvP versus the agents and the soldiers.
Yes, I love that.
Good, so much fun. I think that's a game that needs to be resurfaced. I think Splinter Cell just needs to come back and not be a virtual reality own experience that's rumored to be. Like, it just needs to actually come back and have a presence in today's game. A lot of people are begging for a really good stealth game. But then I don't know if
new voice. I'm kind of over Michael Ironside's voice. I gotta be honest.
I'd be cool with the guy who voices Kratos if we're gonna go with the voice.
Yeah,
to do it, or to see like what Troy Baker might do with that voice as well could be really cool. For my number one game that I would love to see remade is a shooter, first-person shooter. There's going to be there's a large community now of this series, and it changed, and I don't like the direction it took because I liked what it was. But Rainbow Six Vegas, Rainbow Six Vegas, and Rainbow Six Vegas 2, just throw them together as one big title as Rainbow Six Vegas. Leave it as the cover system that it had. Leave it as the shooting mechanics that it had. Leave the core code in there that it had. Add to it and branch out from it. Get away from the siege, lean and peek and all that stuff that I don't find that fun. It's like, oh, you shot me through this little hole because I couldn't make out your face. Just all that stuff. I haven't
played it because of stuff like that.
endless amounts of fun with the Vegas series.
Oh, I remember.
And I think it's one that they need to revisit, bringing back. And I think a lot of people in the shooter space would jump right over.
Yeah, so I'm with you there. I enjoyed the first two Rainbow Six games. I didn't necessarily like the direction it went, and I actually just kind of exited and moved on to other first-person shooters. I'm going to do all three of my games that should never be remade or remastered all at the same time, and I'll go through my whys. Number one is a game I loved as a child, but is not one that ever needs to see the light of day on any system after. And that was a game called California Games that was on Nintendo. If you remember California Games, you got to surf, you got to do hacky sack, you got to do skateboarding with a very uneven surface and lots of very dangerous sand.
Yeah.
It just doesn't transition over, like it's not, hacky sacking on next gen doesn't sound like a lot of fun. You know what I mean? Another is a game called Jackal, which if you don't remember Jackal was a Jeep-based shooter on Nintendo. Was this really fun, engaging, like as a kid, I really loved it. It was like guerrilla war. It was one of those like lots of waves of enemies and you had the camera that came down over top so you saw everything while it was happening. A Jeep-based shooter on next gen does not sound like a good time to me. I think really, I mean, it doesn't really do, much for me as a consumer.
Yeah.
And I was struggling with this third one. By the way, I had an honorable mention from before, but my third one, man, and now I should have written down the name of the game. There was a jet ski racer that we used to play on PlayStation 2 all the time. What was it? It wasn't Wipeout. It was.
Maybe it was Wipeout. No,
was it Wipeout?
No.
But I will say that jet ski racing on PlayStation 2, Jet Moto was the name of the game.
That's right.
Doesn't sound like it. It sounds like it was fun for that time.
Yeah.
And we have so many other things that we could do with racing. I would love a very long racing experience. I think those could be really cool. Maybe a race across the Sahara type thing. But ultimately, like, that's not really a game that I'd ever like to see. Well, a remake that was my honorable mention.
Yeah.
Near and dear to my heart. And I think we don't have enough games like this. Takes me back to the whole co-op experience that I think would be really cool. Would be a little game from Super Nintendo called Final Fight. I loved Final Fight. It was a very simple story with layers to it. The most amazing mayor ever. I mean, that was a mayor right there. Okay. And just, it opened up this whole world. And I think if you took it into, maybe a third person, combat based game, and you just took the intensity, look, those gangs and all the guys that were involved it was very intense for that time. And I think you got some narrative that you could create there. I would definitely sit down and play, Final Fight over again for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll jump through mine that way too. So one is, this was a game I used to play a lot. Speaking of, PlayStation games. Actually, let me go ahead and get the first one out of the way. You mentioned it earlier. I just think it should, exist in the space that it does. Is E.T. There should be no revisiting E.T. It should stay being the worst game ever made. Yes, you can watch a documentary on Netflix that helps explain the story of that game getting made and why it is as terrible as it is, and the fact that Steven Spielberg sat down, watched the game, and was like, "This is great. I'm behind it." I don't know. So absolutely no ET should
keep doing movies, Steven. Keep doing movies.
Should ever exist.
Away from the games.
There was a game. I think this is a sports type game that I don't want to see remade, specifically because I think they could do so much more with it. But a game called Cool Borders was this snowboarding game.
Yes, I remember Cool Borders.
Yeah, and I liked it a lot, but it was very limited, and I think they've done so much with the snowboarding game that, like,
sure,
I'm I think they've still doing like SSX tricky games, or that's probably going to resurface with the success of Tony Hawk's
Sure.
Pro Skater. Like, we should just expect that. But that would just be like that snowboarding game where I'm like, I don't want to see this remade because I have fond memories of it. Because I feel like if you turn around and remake it, people would see where it was limited and it didn't mirror that, SSX type game. Like, this is a lot of fun, because I just think that extreme sports snowboarding thing has upgraded so much and has become this wonderful experience. For graphics now, I just don't touch it. You know what I mean? Just leave it in the past. Let it be that kind of like foundation game, which is actually leading me into my next game. And this is a controversial one because this game resonates with a lot of people within first-person shooters who have been like, I'd love to see this game remade. I'd love to see this game remastered. And I have one reason why it shouldn't. And that's the game Black. If we remember Black was amazing. Yeah. It was such a wonderful shooter. It was next level. Black was like the crisis of what first-person shooters should be. And it's because of that, they shouldn't remake it a remaster, because there's nothing you can do with Black now to make that experience feel like it did then, because it's such an isolated anomaly that led to this next generation of what all first-person shooters took from it. Was, how do we make it super realistic? How do we make the sounds loud? Like, how do we make it feel like Black? And that's what I think every shooter afterwards did that. Some people are like, oh, why not remake Black? And it's like, because it was purposeful in its time period. Let's not rehash that just to cash cow it,
Yeah, I never saw my copy of Black again when I loaned it to a certain professional wrestler named Kenny. Loaned him Black. Never saw it.
Who will be joining us on a later episode as we talk some more.
I will make sure I bring up where is my copy of Black, because I never got it back.
But I knew that's a controversial one, because Black, everybody, it impacted a lot of people.
Yeah, that was like my first sci-fi shooting experience on PlayStation was a game called Disruptor. I don't know if people remember Disruptor, but it was a first-person shooter. But it also, you had powers, so very much kind of Bioshock-ish. Yeah. Never want to see that game again, because Bioshock took it and just made it a whole lot better. Yeah. So,
and you know what? We could probably do another.
Shout out to Bioshock.
Yeah, we could probably do kind of like we did with PlayStation, like Volume 1 episode. This could be like a Volume 1 of like remakes that they should do and remakes they shouldn't do, because some other games are starting to pop in my head that I was like, I want to put that on the list. So we're going to have another top 3. So people are like, is that your top 6?
Sure.
Nah, it's top 3 of Volume 2, son.
Yeah. I'll give you a preview. Cool Spot. It's on one of my lists.
Which one is it?
Oh, exactly, dude. Oh, yes. But if you, the listener or viewer, have any ideas of remastered games that you would love to see, or remade games that you would like to see, and what changes you'd like, throw it in the comments.
Absolutely.
Okay? I think that would be really cool to see as a community, some changes, some updates, and some things that people want to see, because we as the consumer, we have a voice. Let them know what our voice is, and make sure again that E.T. and Superman 64 never see the light of day again.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that is the best note to go out on with this episode of remasters and remakes that we want to see, that we have seen, and that we should never see.
That's why I wore my Reverse Flash shirt today, because it was about. Yeah, you like that?
Yeah, it's so layered. You're forward thinking over there, pal. Well, that does bring us to the end of this Nerd Jocks episode. This was a lot of fun. I love stuff like this, going back into the memory bank and thinking of these games and coming up with our lists and the dialogue and discussion. Hope you enjoyed listening as well.
Yes, really enjoyed it. Our next episode, if you are tuning in, sports in the era of COVID, does it really count?
Is this a season
more at 11
of astronauts? More at 11.
Exactly. For the Nerd Jock podcast, I'm Jesse Grund.
I'm Chris
thank
Marone.
you, nerds. Thank you, jocks.
And
thanks,
we
Nerd
will
Jocks.
Catch you, listeners and viewers, next time.
Woo!
Woo-hoo.